Hey folks, it's Samuel Heber. Samuel Heber from YouTube, Samuel Heber from Facebook, SamuelHeber.net. That's my website, and Heber Family Ventures on Instagram. Welcome to another installment of Heroes of Autism. I'm here with Alicia, and Alicia, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a teacher, and I recently found out that I have Aspergers, like back in November, I think.
Oh, really?
And
Recent.
so, yeah,
What do you teach?
I teach second graders, which is cool.
Mhm. Where are you located?
In Washington State.
Oh, very awesome. I have a cousin who lives near there in Portland. Um, what led you to want to becoming a teacher?
Um, I think at when I was the first time I was in college, I studied psychology
Mm,
and decided I wanted to work with kids. And at first, I thought I wanted to go into like nursing, but I ended up like volunteering at my elementary school that I grew up at and
hmm
helping kids learn how to read. And it was just so rewarding
hmm
that I was like, okay, I have to go back to school and become a teacher.
That's really great. Yeah, and teaching is a very noble profession. I was a teacher's assistant for 8 years myself, and it was quite rewarding.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you enjoy about teaching?
Um, Specifically, like uh, how challenging it is because like every kid's different and they need
hmm
different things, and it's kind of like I have to figure out what works for each kid each year,
hmm
and it never looks the same. And so that part's really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine how fun that can be. I remember that myself when I was in the school system. So do you think something? Do you think something in your life led you to want to be a teacher and makes you such a good teacher?
um I've had a few really good teachers, I feel like,
hmm
and I just like the connections you're able to make with kids, which kind of to me is kind of funny because it's different for me because I have Asperger's, but I especially like being able to teach kids about it's okay to be different
hmm
and to like use tools to help you navigate the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and I think that's the thing we need to teach all of our children, that everybody's different, no matter who you are, whether you have Asperger's, autism, whatever you may have or don't have. Like you are your unique person, and I think that's one of the definite gifts of being on the spectrum is seems to have taught you and others that differences are awesome,
Yeah.
rather than be something scared of. So seems like you got diagnosed pretty late in life. Most people get diagnosed with Asperger's or autism, you know, at around age 2. I myself got diagnosed at age 14, but there's no time like the present. What made you want to go in and get diagnosed?
Well, I've been seeing a counselor for like the last 3 years or so for PTSD. And as I've like worked through that, we have found that I have a lot of really quirky sensory things. And my therapist was just like, hey, you should just get evaluated and see what happens. And it turned out it was a really great learning experience for me.
How so?
Well, I was I since I studied psychology and I work with in the school system, and so I'm familiar with different tests that people do to evaluate kids. It was kind of fun learning some of the things about myself because it was like, oh, this makes so much more sense.
Mhm.
Like I learned that I'm a super fast processor, so it's really hard for me to talk or write my thoughts sometimes because my
Mhm.
brain is going faster than I can get it out.
Mhm. Yeah, I know the feeling, especially when you're onto something.
Oh yeah.
So how, so this late in life getting diagnosed, you did not receive a lot of the services a lot of ASD individuals receive today, but you must have learned a lot of good coping skills to help with your sensory issues. What are some of those?
um, well, I feel like I've when I find something, it like works for a little bit and then it like doesn't work anymore. Like I have to go through things usually. But
Hmm.
like some of the things that have really worked pretty consistently have been like noise canceling headphones, um, rocking in a hammock, and you know those like sensory socks that you can put around your whole body?
Yes.
They make adult ones that are like a sleeping bag.
Oh,
And
very
so
cool.
I sleep with that and it's amazing.
Hmm. How do you feel when you're inside one?
It's like it like releases like because when with my sensory stuff, my body tenses up a lot, and so my muscles are always tense. It seems like, but with that, it's like being able to push on it and stuff
Hmm.
like is like a relief almost.
Hmm. Yeah, I've definitely met a number of people that experience the same thing when they get inside one of those sleeping bags. Um, so oh crap, I lost my train of thought. Um, so um, what was it like growing up? Because you didn't grow up. I assume you went to like regular school that you didn't have.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Um. Well, when I got evaluated, they actually told me that had I gotten evaluated as a kid, I would have checked like all the boxes for ADHD.
Hmm.
And I'm surprised, well, I guess I'm not really surprised because like when I was a kid, I was the kid that always had to stay in from recess to clean their desk because my desk was always a mess and my handwriting was always terrible because the way I would hold my pencil, it was like a sensory thing where I had to push on it.
Hmm.
And so it looked like my writing looked like a doctor's handwriting a lot of the time. And this was like before, this was right before classrooms started getting multiple computers in them. So, like, I didn't have technology necessarily to help me out
Hmm.
early on, like we do now.
Right. Oh yeah, like I went through the same thing. Like my handwriting I couldn't even write in a straight line. It would go, and then all of a sudden just curve downward.
Yeah.
Um, so like we definitely had to learn how to write on our own, and um, definitely probably presented a lot of challenges. And I also had a very messy desk, so I can often relate to your story that you're telling me. But how did you get more efficient as a student? Because eventually had to learn to write legibly.
Yeah.
Like what techniques started helping you back then?
Um, being able to use a computer to type things definitely helped.
Mm.
Um, and then eventually I like have found things to help me like I did online college the second time I went to college, and that
Mhm.
worked really well for sensory stuff. And it was so easy to organize things into like checklists and stuff. I
Mhm.
usually use like a visual schedule or a checklist nowadays
Mhm.
to keep track of time because I don't think I have any sense of time sometimes.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah, I often don't have sense of time without my visual schedule either that I created. I finally found one that worked during this pandemic.
oh
Um,
yeah,
and I think that's the huge key is one of the huge things that people face on the thing is that people are still trying to make ASD people write and do the old fashioned way of learning, and view technology often as a distraction rather than a helpful tool. But you seem to have found a way to not make it a distraction, but rather use it what technology is meant for is to help us process our information and organize it. Would you recommend that to parents out there that they give technology a try instead of forcing them to their kids to handwriting, which can be such a challenge for so long and often can
Yeah,
distract?
there's cool tools out there that I use and some of my students have access to, like Co-Writer is a really cool app computer program thing,
Mhm.
and it's predictive text.
Mhm.
And as you use it, it learns how you type or how you write, and so it gets better at predicting what you're going to say. Or lately I've been using some speech to text. Like there's a
Mhm.
website I go on where it's free and it's actually pretty accurate because I do not like I spend a lot more time writing emails now that I'm working from home, and I want to make sure that it says what I want it to say.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, and that's what, like, for any parents that may be watching this, like, is a way to convince you to let your kids use technology. Like, it's an alternative way for them to get their thoughts across. Because for those of you who don't know, for ASD, the fine motor skills part can often be very frustrating, and that's why our handwriting is so erratic. Because it takes
Yeah.
a lot for our hands. But if you free up our hands, it allows us to focus on what actually is important, which is what we're trying to get across or learning the information. Um, so the technology also just, I think, helps people like us just like go with the flow rather than getting so frustrated with our hands cramping or not writing legibly. Um, and it's very cool that you've really helped your students also use the same tools that you have, because I'm sure it helps neurotypical children just as much as ASD children.
Yeah, I did a experiment this year with that, because I haven't always used noise canceling headphones.
Right.
And so at school, I use them sometimes, like, um, if we go to assemblies or there's fire drills, I have to have them.
Mm,
And
right.
so the kids wanted to test it out to see what it was like, and I ended up getting a bunch of, like, the really cool, colorful noise buffer headphones,
Hmm.
and now they just use them,
Mm.
and it's kinda cool.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great idea. Like the idea struck me that we should have all of our children, try out noise canceling headphones, because it helps, I think, normalize uh, things like that or other sensory things that help ASD people, rather than looking at someone carrying like 20 sensory toys. Like if everyone had a sensory
Yeah.
toy, no one would really notice it. So I love the idea that you allowed your students to experience what you experience, and I'm sure that helps them understand you a bit better.
Yeah, and a bunch of them have found that, like, they prefer that.
Hmm.
Like, if they're sitting and they're reading or something, they want the quiet. They don't wanna be distracted by anything.
Yeah, that's certainly the case in this very distracting world that we have with all the bells and whistles. And I think one of the huge keys also for our students is learning there's a time and place for technology, and there's a time and place for these sensory toys. So I'm sure when you're standing in front of the class, you're not wearing these headphones, um, because you want to be able to hear your students as you're talking to them. How did you learn to know this is a time and place to use your sensory things that help you with your sensory issues?
Usually, my body tells me,
Hmm.
and, like, at first, I didn't notice it because um that seems to be the thing that's the most impacted is my sensory stuff, and so there would be times where like, wouldn't be able to feel my legs at all or my arms, but,
Right.
like, if my arms start going up like this and getting,
Hmm.
like, tight, that's how I know that I'm starting to get kind of pre-meltdowny, like, it's time to grab the headphones kinda thing.
Yeah, that's great that you have that body awareness, because many people on the spectrum aren't aware of such things like that. And something I've come to notice that our hands often can help us tell our hands can tell us what we're feeling. Because for me too, the higher my hands go, the more tense I know I am. So if I want to know how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
I look where my hands are on my body. And it's great that you have that awareness that when my hands are near my chest, that means headphones go on.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a great tool to teach your students too. That like pay attention to your body and what your body's trying to tell you, because the mind and body are often connected. So what you're feeling inside can often be communicated through your body language.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's something you've learned, and it's something that your students are learning by watching you.
Well,
Um,
and they've also learned, like, if I don't catch it, because there are some days where I don't notice it, depending on how connected I am. And they'll be like, Miss Ziegler, your arms, they're like up here. You have I call them dinosaur arms. And they're like, you need to go put your headphones on. And I'm like, oh, my arms are up here.
and what do your students do while your headphones are on?
Well, it turns out that my auditory is very sensitive, so I can actually still hear. It just takes out, like, the extra sounds. So, like,
Hmm.
usually ticking clocks and the sound of the projector in my classroom
Hmm.
are the things that drive me crazy. That hasn't
Hmm.
been a thing as much lately because I did try integrated listening systems therapy, and
Hmm.
it sort of worked for me. And so I'm a little bit less sensitive
Hmm.
to the point where I don't usually use my headphones unless it's like a meltdown's coming.
Right, and that I think that's a really great tool to learn to desensitize yourself to things that um, you're sensitive to, and again, that's just amazing, body awareness that you know how to help your body adjust to different sounds, and those sounds like the projector and stuff definitely are distracting, not just for students, but with ASD, but adults, and that's great that you are trying all these new things. And what motivates you to keep trying all these new techniques? Because often I met a lot of ASD individuals who get stuck on one way of doing things, and even when they stop working, they refuse to try a new one, like a new kind of therapy. Like, what motivates you to keep trying new things?
I feel like I have this like um desire to want to like be able to be as independent as possible because I typically don't like asking people for help. That's just how I've always been.
Hmm.
And so, and I usually have students, like I've pretty much every year I've taught, I've had a kiddo with some kind of sensory or autism or something along there. And so when I do something in my classroom for myself, it actually helps other kids too.
Hmm.
Like, we have fluorescent lights, which are terrible,
Oh,
but you can buy now they make light covers that are magnetic that stick to your ceiling,
well, that's really
and
cool.
it filters it so that it's not super bright. And
Hmm.
all the kids love that because we get headaches if we turn on all the lights.
Mm. Yeah, I remember that because I have a light sensitivity. That's one of my sensory issues.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, I would have appreciated it, but I went to school back in the '90s where like it wasn't even like the glass cover over the front. It was just the light bulb.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was terrible.
And I got so many headaches from it, and the teachers thought I was just like trying to get an excuse to get out of class. But no, like it really does um, bother us, and it distracts us from actually learning anything. And that's great that you found all these tools that help yourself focus on teaching. Um, so tell me a bit. What do you like to do outside of teaching?
I like to play the guitar. I've taught myself how to play every musical instrument that I know how to play. I think that's like one of my special interests.
Very cool. I'm trying to teach myself guitar right now too.
Yeah. I also like to go to the beach. So like any beach, really.
Hmm.
Um there's a lot of beaches around where I live, and so right now it's really hard not to go to a beach. It's
Hmm.
been a very long time.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's seems like eons at this point.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to keep yourself from not going crazy during quarantine?
Um, I usually because some of my sensory stuff comes out in weird ways. So like one of the things that can cause me to have a meltdown is not moving enough. And so um I go for a walk around my neighborhood like probably 2 or 3 times a day,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to move.
Right.
And working from home's a little bit harder. I had to really like find a schedule that worked for me, um,
Mm-hmm.
and broke up my day in the right kinds of ways. And yeah,
Yeah.
I went through like 4 different visual schedules before I found one that worked.
Yeah. Yeah, for that's really good that you were able to find a schedule that worked. For me, it wasn't until quarantine I actually found a schedule that worked. That I've tried in the many past to make a schedule, but sticking to it, I definitely found COVID-19 to be a blessing in a way. Like it forced me to actually stick to a schedule to get things done. I didn't have much of a
Yeah,
schedule, and then I think that's one of the keys is creating a new routine that works. 'Cause who knows how long we'll be in this?
yeah.
Um, so, um, are you really into space? Because I'm looking behind you and I just see.
Yeah. That's another one of my special interests.
Mm,
Not because I know a lot about space, but I just like looking at it.
mm.
Um, I have a lot of really random special interests.
Yeah. And speaking of special interest, does that help you connect with other people?
Um, yeah, it does surprisingly.
Hmm.
But so does just knowing I have Asperger's because like there are some things about it that people that are neurotypical experience, and so it doesn't feel so like lonely, I guess, or like you're standing out from other people because like some people have some of the same things that I do,
Like what?
just maybe not to my degree that I do.
Right. What are some similarities that you're finding with neurotypicals?
Well, I know a lot of people that struggle with this is going to sound funny, but I don't like texting people because I don't understand like what they're saying.
Mm,
I don't understand how to interpret it, and I don't like talking on the phone. I like seeing people,
mm.
and I guess that's a pretty common thing, because your brain is like trying to interpret what somebody's written to you, and without like emojis, it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah, because you can't read sarcasm in a text usually, unless you really, really know that person.
Yeah.
Um, that's really cool. And how do you get along with your coworkers? Because I don't know if you know or not. Like one of the huge things that causes a lot of ASD people not to hold down a job or too afraid of the job is like the social aspect of work, not knowing what's appropriate to talk about at work and what's appropriate to talk to
Uh,
friends. Like, how do you know what you can say to your coworkers and what you can't say?
well, usually during the school day, I don't necessarily see my coworkers a whole lot because like um when my kids are not in my classroom, like because they're out at recess or they're at lunch, I'm
Right.
usually in my room like having a sensory break,
Mm.
because I have to have those throughout the day. So
Yeah.
I feel like everybody knows that I have Asperger's. Like it's a
Mm.
pretty commonly known thing among my coworkers, and if anything, they're kind of just curious about it. Um,
Mm.
Usually, people like I sense that people will talk to me and they'll try to make sure that I'm interpreting it the way they want me to,
Mm.
like what they're saying, like because
Mm.
it's so hard to read for me to read like people's voice tone. the tone of voice really throws me off.
Yeah, I've experienced that a lot too. Like, it wasn't until like my mid-20s that I started to get sarcasm.
Yeah, I can't tell when people are joking or if they're serious.
And the only way around that is to ask, "Are you joking?" Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that can lead to even more funny situations. Like, "No, I'm serious," or "No, I was kidding." And I think that's another beauty of autism. Like it gets rid of all the subtleties of human interaction. It helps you get down to the nitty gritty of who's being funny, who's being serious, and
Yeah.
I'm sure due to your gift of being on the spectrum, has really taught you to value straightforward people, uh,
Oh yeah.
but at the same time tolerate the fact that everyone's different, and has different ways of expressing themselves, and I'm sure it makes you fascinated on like learning how an individual ticks. Where I think
Yeah.
most neurotypicals I meet aren't interested in observing those things, and probably why you got into psychology is because you wanted to, correct me if I'm wrong, but learn why people do the crazy things they do.
No, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, 'cause I went to psychology for that exact reason. Like, I want to learn human behavior in a way that I can understand, which was a
Like, I
science.
think I understand it a lot better because
Mm,
I took so many psychology classes. Like, I've learned things.
right, same here. I've definitely learned a lot, but the hugest lesson I've learned outside of school is that learning to accept that people are unpredictable, even no matter how much psychology you do know, and that keeps people. It makes it fun to interact with people, and I think it's a huge lesson that seems that you've learned and I've learned. I think a lot of ASD people out there should also learn that okay, you can't predict it, but that's half the fun. Like if you knew every plot twist in your favorite movies the first time you watched it, it wouldn't be your favorite movies. Just be like, oh, I know he was dead the whole time, like in The Sixth Sense. Like that twist wouldn't hit you
Yeah.
or or Luke, Darth Vader is Luke's, father. Like the first time you saw that, like, that blew your mind. If you knew it was coming, it wouldn't have that much of an impact on you.
Yeah.
Um, so, how has what's it like dating on the spectrum for you?
It's been really interesting. I do really well with online dating though.
How
Like
so?
it's less intimidating.
Hmm.
Because but through therapy I have learned that when people start dating, nobody knows what they're doing. So that has really helped me. I think of that every time. I'm like, no, really, nobody knows what they're doing. It's not just you because you have Asperger's.
Hmm.
Everybody's new to this.
Right, because every individual you date is different. It's not like you like lined up like 10 Marilyn Monroes and like with slight variations. Like, okay, I know what's coming with her. No, like everyone is different. And like once you accept that they're just as awkward as you are those first few dates, yeah, I think dating does get so much easier, and that's a really great way to look at the way you look at dating. And that's how I met my wife, through online dating, because like eHarmony asked me those very specific questions that helped me find her and narrow things down.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any advice for any ASD women out there that want to date but have no clue really how to get started with online dating?
Um, I would suggest like picking one online dating program.
Mm-hmm.
Like I asked a lot of my friends which ones they used, and that helped me kind of narrow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Because like different ones have different things, and some give a lot of information, and some are just really simple and
Right.
easier to navigate, which I like because like I'm very like visual, and
Mm-hmm.
so if I see something with a lot of information, that's just too much for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's good just to like try different platforms and see which one you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think the other huge thing is you have to know what you want. Do you just want to hook up with somebody, or do you want an actual relationship, or
Yeah.
or are you ready to find the one? That's a big question I had to ask before I signed on to like eHarmony. Like, why am I picking this? Like, oh, because I'm done dating. I want to get married.
Yeah.
Um, and and that's how you know how to invest yourself. Where you're gonna just go in the free sites, or if you really want to do something serious, you invest in the find a way to invest in those really good sites.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you disclose close to your dates that you are on the spectrum?
I actually haven't yet. I'm mm, like I'm getting to know someone right now, and we're friends on Facebook, and I'm like, oh shoot, I posted that I have Asperger's on Facebook a million years ago or
Right,
whatever. But then I'm like, that's just like who I am, and if they don't like that, that's too bad.
right. And you want them to accept you as you. Because the one thing I learned through friendships and dating, if your autism does not bother you, it won't bother the other person. If they're truly meant to be your friend or be your boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah. No,
Like,
that was definitely challenging when I got diagnosed. I was like, who am I going to tell? I feel like people should know this about me, but what's going to happen when I tell them?
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that people that were diagnosed as early as 2 to now face. It's often a guessing game, but I think the biggest secret that I have discovered is you present, for you to be who is Alish, who is Sam. Like, don't start off with "Hi, I'm autistic" or "Hi, I'm Asperger."
No, yeah.
I've seen a lot of, well, I've heard a lot of stories about they just start right off like, "Oh, I'm gonna let them know right away." I'm like, start off with get to know the quirky you, and then like as you get past like the surface part of getting to know someone. Oh, like I was diagnosed with Asperger's at age 42. I was 14, 13, 22, and then you let them in on your history. You don't have to lead with your autism, but um, it's just as long as you can find a way to be proud of it. It shouldn't bother your partner. And if it does, you have a conversation about it and you work through it, or it just ain't meant to be. And it's not your autism that wants
Yeah.
a relationship. That person's just not right for you because you as a human being and that person as a human being just don't fit the right way. And
Yeah.
that's just part of being human and going through the dating process. Um, and I'm sure, like so far, when you've told people like that's been the case, some people probably have, I guess, reacted like, "No, duh, she is," or
Yeah, that's like my family. My family's like, oh, that makes so much more sense.
right. And then when you meet
I
total
see
strangers,
it now.
yeah. And then when you meet total strangers, either they'll react with like, "Oh," like just like your family, or they might look at you weird for a moment, but once they actually talk to you, they'll be like, "This girl's awesome." And that's the key is even after you disclose it, like just keep being you. Don't change who you are in any way. Just be you, and that's how the best way to advocate for yourself and show people who you are. Do you find that to
Yeah.
be the case?
Yeah, it's definitely different as a teacher, because I have actually I have a meltdown plan in place for
Mm.
if I have a meltdown at school, and it probably only happens like maybe 2 or 3 times a year.
Uh-huh.
But it's something that the kids don't usually see because I'm pretty good at keeping it together until I can be away. But my kids know that I have Asperger's. I don't tell them like the first day of school, obviously,
Right.
but there's a lot of really good books out there actually for kids, and so it's a really good way to introduce the topic because I do have some STEM behaviors that
Mhm.
if I hold them in, it can build up and be very uncomfortable. So,
Mhm.
sometimes I make different noises with my mouth, or I click my tongue, or a common one is when I'm excited, I flap my arms. And
Mhm.
so, there's this book called Uniquely Wired, and it's written by a
Mhm.
school counselor about autism, and it talks about specifically arm flapping.
Mhm.
So my kids got to learn about that this year, and so now it's just like that's just what she does.
Mhm. That's beautiful, and that's one of my favorite things about kids. It's just like they see it, something different that they have not yet to be told to react poorly to it. They're like, at least for the most part, they don't react poorly to it. They think, oh, that's interesting, and they see that the difference doesn't bother the person like you, then it won't bother them. Like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's really how you present the stimming. And when I was a teacher, teaching assistant, I had to learn, when to express it, and if I was, like you said, headed towards like a meltdown, I would, wait until the kids were gone and go to private place to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's the, you know, awesomeness about being an adult and being so aware like you are is, there's a time and place to have your feelings. You're not denying yourself. You're just being respectful of other people's space and allowing yourself to be focused. You're like, there's 30 minutes left in the period. Okay, the kids will be gone in 30 minutes. Then I'll go and
Yeah.
have my moment.
I have other strategies too for like if it's like, okay, I can't hold it in. I need the
Hmm.
kids to do something quiet. So we designed something called stop, drop, and read. And so I could be like, okay, I'm about to have a meltdown. Okay, kids, it's time to stop, drop, and read. And then it's silent. And they know that that's just something that I need sometimes, but I
Hmm.
rarely have to use that.
Very cool. And your strategies are really cool, and I might take some of them for myself if I ever end up back in a classroom where I'm just talking in front of people again, because there's always teachable moments in life, and you definitely have taught me a lot today. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Yeah.
But I always like to end my Heroes of Autism interviews with the following question: if you could change one way the world sees ASD, what would it be and why?
Um, I think it would be something about how people with autism connect with other people because a lot of like there's so many it's a spectrum so like
Mm-hmm.
some people are nonverbal and aren't able to use words to connect with people but
Mm-hmm.
I've learned through this that because we actually have an autism program at my school with kids that are nonverbal
Mm-hmm.
and they use speech devices and stuff. But I've learned that there's like, you can still feel a connection with people. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because I have Aspergers. And so whenever I'm around people that are on the spectrum, I like feel this like special connection to them.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm grateful that I'm able to say what I'm experiencing as it's happening. It's taken a lot of work because it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't always been like that.
As it always
But
does.
I want people to know that like people that are nonverbal also have those feelings and they're just not able to explain it to people in a way that they're going to understand.
Right. It's like their own, but they have their own language, I like to say.
Oh yeah, they definitely do.
Mm-hmm. That we all are social creatures, whether we can speak with our mouths or not. And I think that's one of the huge things people need to be aware of is like look to the way we communicate, whether we talk or not. Okay. How can people follow you if they want to learn more about your awesome teaching and skills in life?
Um, well, during this quarantine time, I decided I'd been thinking about writing a book about how to navigate sensory things, especially because of all the stuff I've learned. But that sounded too hard because of getting my thoughts on paper. So I created an Instagram called Adapting Aspie. And I also use it like so that I don't share on my personal one, like all my Aspie stuff because
Mm,
some people aren't as curious about it as others. And
right.
so I share like I don't know, I haven't posted on it as much as I'd like to because I'm trying to balance work and my personal life right now.
Right.
Um, but my goal is to like post ideas for sensory tools and stuff
Hmm.
and tips, cool stuff that I learn, stuff like that. Um, maybe stuff that I write, because I have gotten into writing, and that's been a way that I've been able to understand how I see the world.
Yeah, and I think that's like Instagram is such a good platform for people on the spectrum because it's visual.
Oh yeah,
And
and
we're
it's
visual. What
simple.
what better way for us to communicate with the world than Instagram? So anyone who's watching this, go on Instagram and just type in autism and look how many awesome
Yeah.
people like me and Elise are. Like there's so many of us on Instagram because it's a visual platform, which is, our bread and butter. All right, thank you so much for coming on my show today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right, folks, this has been
Yeah.
another episode of Heroes in Autism. Please subscribe to this woman's Instagram and learn more of her awesome tricks. Please subscribe to my channel below. This is Sam Huber signing off.